Dark Loops Productions and the Squid Game, a podcast for discussing the extremely popular Netflix series, The Squid Game. I'm your host, Dr. Scott Jordan, aka Zombie Scotty, cognitive psychologist, philosopher from Illinois State University. And joining me in tonight's discussion is an amazing group of Squid Game fans. Fellow contestants, please introduce yourselves, tell us a little something about who you are, and then tell us your most robust Squid Game memory. Notice I didn't say your favorite, I just said your most robust. And we'll start with Suejung.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Suejung Han. I'm a counseling psychologist at the Illinois State University. Maybe I'm originally from South Korea, and I really enjoyed the series. And because I was so immersed in the series, I didn't have a critical perspectives or discentered perspectives on the series necessarily. So we'll see, what I can come up with today. And the most robust memory is when Lee Jung-jae, I cannot remember his name in the series.
What? 456.
Yes, that guy. He's when he lied to the old man, the number one, and when he was experiencing this, he was feeling torn, but he had to survive. And when he was in agony while telling a lie, so that I remember that.
Yeah, I thought that was very well acted. That actor shows every single emotion in high fidelity right on his face and from the beginning of the series. How about you, Shengtian?
My name is Shengtian. An assistant professor of school psych program at Illinois State University. And I'm, of course, a big fan of Squid Game and just bought 3 Legos, the pink guys, put on my office and super proud of it. For me, by the way, I'm from China, but I'm Korean minority. So I may have a very much shared experiences like a lot of South Koreans, but I also have like different, experiences, maybe compared to a lot of South Koreans too. So I may bring something different to the table, but we'll see, The most robust moment for me, gosh, I think I cried, but it was the moment when the South Korean girl who gave up her life just by dropping the marble for the North Korean girl. I think that was the most memorable moment because, I probably gonna talk too much, but, I feel like a lot of individuals in North Korea, they had a really hard life and trying their best to come to South Korea a lot of times to gain a better life, much, much better life. And on the other hand, we would assume a lot of South Koreans would have much, much better life and very beautiful vision of their life. Yeah, that was opposite situation at the moment. And just triggered a lot of thoughts in my mind. And I just thought it was really beautiful that one person can actually, give up her life for another person,
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Okay, and how about you, Joey?
Hi, everyone. I'm Joey Bai. I'm a current PhD student at Brown University. I study cognitive psychology. Actually, I study cognitive science. Sorry.
Perfectly fine.
I always feel like I'm a psychology student, And Scott was my advisor in my master program. That's why I know Scott. And the most robust moment from the show, it's very coincidental. It's also from the same episode that you two mentioned before. But it's the moment when those 2 girls decided to, let's do one game in the end, but saving all those time before that to have a conversation. Just imagining that situation is very powerful because there's no point in life you can be totally honest with the other because there's no way the other is gonna spread this information out. So it's basically you're insured with security, you can be totally vulnerable. And I think it's in some ways a privilege to have that moment in their life. That's the robust scene I remember.
Very well said. Thanks for that, Joey. I already told you guys who I am. For me, the most robust moment was when the two male best friends at the end were the last two. And the one who went to school says, you know, when we play these games as kids, they used to call us home. And no one's calling us now, right? And I have to imagine that was said in Korean in a way that I can relate to the English translation, but I just don't know if there was something more in the Korean that I didn't get. This whole show, as we'll get through talking about it, felt like a culture telling itself, don't go that way. There's a Western way that has a huge cost if you follow it. And that line seemed to seal the deal for me. You know, no one's calling us home anymore. So anyway, we'll talk more about that as we go through the show. But that's a strong vibe I got. So look, here's what we're going to do. What we're going to do in this podcast is we're going to break down the show, break up the show into games. So in each podcast, we'll talk about the events of the show leading up to the next game. So tonight, we were going to be discussing the first game played, which was Ddakji. However, since the first episode is called Green Light, Red Light, we'll just talk about the episode up through the playing of Red Light, Green Light. So the game that we're going to talk about first is Ddakji. It's a game that they play in the subway. So anybody want to jump in and tell us what that game is?
I can go because I had experiences when I was young. And personally, I don't have the same version of Ddakji when I was young. We had a different version of Ddakji, but the rule is the same, you know. Everyone has their own Ddakji, and whoever go first, they would put their Ddakji on the ground, and the other guy or girl, doesn't matter, will smash on the Ddakji. And if you flip that one, you got to win, you know. And actually, Suejung and I were talking about, is there any strategies regarding, you know, playing Ddakji? And I believe there is, you know, some strategy, some skills needed for the victory. So basically, sometimes the ground is super flat, so you can't see which one is more tilted or not. In that case, what I personally would do is, also it depends on what type of Ddakji you have, but I would smash on the ground so I can generate some, you know, wind, so I can blowing away the Ddakji as one of my strategy. On the other hand, if I can see one side, you know, one side is more tilted than the other side, I would hit on the side that is more tilted, so that it has more chance to flip to win, you know. But that's basically how you play. The other side, hit on it, you win, you flip it, you get the Ddakji. So the more you win, the more Ddakji you would have, you know. Anyone want to add other details or, you know, thoughts on it?
Would this be a game? Go ahead, Suejung.
I really don't know how it works. I mean, I have seen boys playing the game when I was young. It was more of kind of boys' game. I know that I sound like a sexist, but, you know, that's pretty much boys' game. And I really don't know how it works. And, you know, Shengtian and I kind of talked about it earlier today. I mean, I really don't know how you win. And at the moment, Kung Yu kept winning. And Lee Jung-jae, that unfortunate guy, he kept losing. And without the strategy, I mean, not knowing the strategies, that was puzzling to me. Why does Kung Yu keep winning when Lee Jung-jae keeps losing? And maybe just I still don't know. One speculation that I came up with later was that maybe some luckier people, they get luckier and luckier because they are at peace and they have confidence. You know, they feel they are in positive mood states, and they are psychological resources, and with some self-fulfilling prophecy, you know, they get lucky and lucky again and again. And Lee Jung-jae, on the other hand, he was stressed out. He wanted to win. He tried too hard. And we all know what happens when we try too hard. We just mess up. And
he got beat up every time you lose.
Right. So that was the only speculation that I came up with. And it was interesting because my understanding of Ddakji was that there's no known strategy, at least to me. So it was an interesting choice of the game. It almost looks like a game that is totally by, you can win the game by chance. I don't know. I don't know much about the game, though.
I'm thinking if this happens in the show, not in real life, maybe the director just want to have this piece there to make Jung-ji lose every time intentionally as a function, to serve some goal that the idea the director want to express. Like the feeling I'm getting is this piece is really kind of a small climax in the show, in the first episode, because before that, all the stories evolves around how poor Jung-ji is and how the life is not going well with him. And here it climaxed as like you even lose the game that you win by chance. So like luck is not on your side, money is not on your side. And this can give Jung-ji enough motivation to go to the game. Because like once you feel like, oh, I'm so deprived, my motivation for money is stronger and hence higher motivation to the game. And also like I was thinking why Gong Yu was the guy to play the salesman, because Gong Yu is ultra famous, like super handsome South Korean actor, like just to serve a small role here. I was thinking why that's the case. I have something in mind, but I also want to hear your guys' opinion first.
Well, so I was actually going to ask you guys that question.
Oh,
because the gentleman who shows up at his weakest point is an extremely attractive man, extremely well dressed. I'm going to say dressed like an American businessman. I know that's culturally bound for me. People dress like business persons all over the world. There was a certain Americanness that jumped out to me about that character. And a cool, calm businessman type of vibe that is a viper, but has a smile and never makes you feel ill at ease. So I was going to ask you guys why they picked that particular actor to play that role, if you have any idea.
Actor-wise, I have no idea. We gotta ask the director. Director may think about, all right, this dude is super famous and attract a lot of people and may play a bigger role in second or third season. We never know. But I do think, I don't know, it's my speculation, which is like, I don't know if you all heard about like loan shark, you lend money with extreme high rate of like interest. In that business, what people do is like send out a very nice looking people with a very good manner to give money. And when you want to pay the money that you lent from that attractive person, there's some scary people waiting for you so that you have to pay back. So I think that kind of logic kind of meets, in these situations where you have like those great looking people attract you to this like Squid Game. Once you get in there, you may die, so I see that, functionality of having this attractive person to getting people into that, like, hell,
Yeah, the guy kind of looked to me like a walking commercial, right?
He is actually in reality as well,
he just is everything that capitalism promises you, right? And all the things that capitalism does to lure you in. Now, I'm not trying to be anti-capitalist here. I'm watching this, the show, and I'm experiencing it a certain way. And it was no accident that they picked this young man who, like I said, looks like a walking commercial. And I thought it was interesting that he decided to take his wins in body slaps. I know you don't have to give me any money. Just give me part of your body. And he slaps him in the face. And it happens so often that when our hero finally wins, he goes to slap the guy and he stops him and he says, "No, remember, you win money." I thought that was fairly clever. It seems like our hero is addicted to variable ratio schedules of reinforcement. In other words, he plays these gambling games. He gambles with his mother's ATM card, right? Because he does the 2 codes and then he's got to do the 3rd one, and it ends up being his daughter's birthday instead of his. And then he freaks out like he's had this huge rush. And then he goes to the horse track and he wins and he freaks out and he has this huge rush. And then he gets all his money taken. And then he goes to the crane game to buy his daughter a gift, and the little dude helps him and he wins and he has this huge rush. So it seems that this guy, he's addicted. We call it gambling, but at the same time, for me, it's just a variable ratio schedule of reinforcement. You just keep doing behaviors and eventually one of them succeeds and you get a rush. And I'm wondering, is there anything cultural embedded in that? Because he has these arguments with his mother, about, she says, "Remember, it's your daughter's birthday," and she gives him some money, and then he says, "Oh, that's not enough to do anything with," even though she's just the one working, gave him the money. Is there a generational cultural comment being made here above and beyond anything I would have seen myself?
I think I had a little bit different take on his kind of gambling, and I think that's related to my speculation about why Kong Yu was featuring that guy. I felt like you said, I felt like Kong Yu really symbolized the cruel face of capitalism. It looks beautiful. It's gorgeous. Looks so nice. And you just cannot fight with it. And it slaps you. It just ruins your dignity. However hard you try, there is no way you win the game against capitalism. If you are once disadvantaged and if you do not have any other advantages, there is no way. You just end up losing your dignity, but you just still you have to keep approaching to either survive or because there is no other choice. And I mean, he used to be a hardworking blue-collar worker, and he had work ethics. He was not a gambler, and he worked hard. He was a hardworking man. But then I cannot remember the details of how his company was in trouble, financial trouble, laying off people. But I think he was laid off or something. That's the quality of capitalism. But he didn't have any other, safety nets or other privileges that can protect him. He was barely making it by working hard as a blue-collar worker. And then that was shattered. So his fragile stability was just shattered by that one layoff. And there was nothing else that he could do. I mean, he was not a gambler. He didn't have addictive personality. He was not an impulsive person. He was not a lazy person. He was not a, immature person to take advantage of his old mother's money on gambling. I think it really demonstrated what a continued helplessness really can look like. One's hardworking person end up, being like that, and taking the blame of being a parasite, of your old mother, and not taking care of your child properly, and being divorced by your wife because you are a failure from the capitalism standpoint. So
Anyone else
I-
want to respond to that?
Oh, I never thought could be a contrast or analogy of facing capitalism. Now that you guys mentioned that, I feel like it really makes sense because this contrast appeared not just once. Like there's the businessman, and also in the end, I don't want to do spoiler, but in the end, he's gonna get on the plane, but he turn away. What's on the other end of the plane? It's
Yeah.
capitalism, right? Anyway, seems like a motif in this show. But to respond to man character choice, for me, when I saw that actor playing that role, my feeling is that the actor is handsome, successful, sharp, rich, and if I were to stand next to that guy, I will feel shamed from all around, from all aspects. By using that actor, the director can make audience feel the empathy of Zhongji, like what he feels at the moment. Like kind of, dignity was hurt, and feel like I'm no rival. And on top of all that, I'm losing the game and getting smashed. And in the end, when I win, I forgot my original goal to win the money. I just want to fight back at that point.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I'm going to ask: Is this a popular theme in South Korea right now? And what I mean is, the American middle class since the 1980s has seen the decimation of the union system, sort of loss of the employment infrastructure that afforded an upper middle class lifestyle without a college education. That has gotten difficult as labor has gone overseas, unions have gone away. So is this a similar theme in the show? I mean, sorry if that's a non-question, but the thing is, we're living very similar things, and we're seeing very similar things in the United States right now in terms of some of the unintended consequences of long-term commitments to capitalism and privatization.
Very hard question. Go ahead, Sujin.
No, go ahead.
Very short, because I don't understand this question that deeply. I don't have much experience of this in China because in China it's a government-controlled capitalism, basically. So like once the private sector is too strong, the government will just intervene, just break the market law. So I don't experience that in my life. Yeah, that's from my perspective.
My take on it was that for me, I didn't see any Americanness, but I mean, the industrialization, that came from Westernization, and very much the industrialized Asian societies are very much, under the influence of Western and American culture. But I grew up in that industrialized culture, so nothing American really popped up to me.
Right.
And the economy in South Korea, I mean, it's still capitalism, but I think it has some unique twist than what's happening in America. It's a small country. The education level is very high. I cannot remember the percentage of college graduates, but I think it's alarmingly high. Do you remember, Shengtian, at all about the number? It was just...
I can check it up, but I think it's over 80, whatever. I can check it
Yeah,
up.
college education rate is 80%.
Now, go ahead.
In college graduate diploma almost feels like high school diploma there. Everything is so competitive. Market is small. And so the competition is really high there. And we have limited opportunities because of the size of the country compared to all these talented people. And it's getting worse due to the pandemic. And so it's getting the collapse of the middle class. That's also kind of happening in Korea. And I don't know about the status of middle class crisis in America. I'm not that familiar with what's happening in America, ironically. So I really cannot see the parallels. I can see what's happening in Korea from the chronological context of what's happening in Korea.
So when you talk about a middle class crisis in South Korea, what exactly does that mean?
So, people are making more money, with their seed money by stocks, cryptocurrency, and by having buildings to rent. And those business owners, they are closing their business because of COVID, because of, we had a lot more strict rules imposed on businesses and restaurants and things like that for COVID safety. And at the same time, we had less compensations for those business owners. And we are getting a lot of troubles among the business owners. And even before the pandemic, there were some signs of the collapse of middle class. But I don't claim myself as an expert in that, but that was my observation.
Yeah, what I can say is, for example, in the United States, the university where we work, 15% of the university's budget comes from the government. Only 15%, right? That means that it's close to being a private university. And so the cost of education continues to increase. And of course, that has huge implications for middle to lower middle class Americans in terms of their ability to either go to college or have to go into incredible debt to get through college. So there is social help for education, but it's not a socialized education system, right? My experiences, for example, in Germany, it was a very heavily socialized education system, but you had to compete with other students to get into that free education system, and that had its own cultural ramifications and problems. Another part of the middle class crisis in the United States is following World War II, we had saw the rise of American middle class unions, and labor organized and was able to demand higher wages, to the point where a friend of mine was making $17.50 pushing a broom at a factory when he was 17 years old. That was back in the late 70s. I mean, that was probably equivalent to $25 to $30 an hour now. And there was a life you could have, and it came with incredible benefits. Government was taking more money to pay for education. So as all those things have sort of swept away, all I'm going to say is it doesn't surprise me we see American middle class in a certain place politically right now. And so that's what I meant when I said I kind of resonated with some of the themes, some of the fairly anti-capitalist themes I saw going on in the show. And there's the one character who was his friend who went to college. Now, is that state college in South Korea, or is college privatized? How does that work?
It's Seoul National, university, right?
Yeah, Seoul National University. That's a national university. There are some national universities, and there are private universities too. So
right.
Tracks.
Okay, because even in a nationalized education system, there's all kinds of political class issues that come to play in terms of taking exams and figuring out who goes and who doesn't. So it's not like it's free of its issues.
Yeah,
go ahead, please.
Sorry. So the prestige is not determined by whether they are private or whether they're national. The tuitions are slightly cheaper for national universities. but the prestige is determined by some other factors. And the one that he graduated, the Seoul National, that was the top, the Korea's Harvard kind of.
Mhm.
And then there is this kind of lineage of hierarchy of the prestige of the universities. And
Right.
So if you go to that university, that means you're really successful. So he was kind of symbolizing the outcome of hard work.
And who you connect with, stuff like that. It's also about the community that you involve in, part of the community, who can support you after your graduation, stuff like that. So it's quite different than, maybe similar to some degree to US, system, I would say, but maybe quite different from US as well.
I mean, the alumni network.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Say that again, Joey.
Alumni network. It's a very valuable resource if you graduate from like the top university.
Yeah. I don't know, Suejung, you can correct me, but it's like alumni's father as well, alumni's mother, alumni's relatives who might be connected with that person. It's all connected to generate that like whole different community that can, make them in a different level compared to a lot of different people, in the society.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that happens in elite American universities as well.
Yeah.
Very true.
Legacy alums. What's that?
Oh, I just said yes, Joey.
Oh. Hey, I'm climbing the ladder right here.
There you go. So before we go on from talking about Ddakji, does anyone have anything else they want to say about what happened in the show up to that point?
It's almost a cliche, but mom's sacrifice, for the children, the old mother, she doesn't take care of her body, her health, and she knows that she's in a fatal condition, but she doesn't want to use any money to take care of her body. And she just works every day. She literally worked hard to death. And she still cared about her granddaughter. And so.
No, she tells him, you need to get your daughter. There's a guy upstairs who knows something about law, and he says that if the father can afford to keep the child, that he can. He says, if you don't keep her and she goes to the United States, she's going to forget Korean and you guys are not going to understand each other. So she's very aware of the stakes of their lives at that moment. And so after he plays the game, he wins, he goes home. The guy gives him a card, of course, then he goes home. He stops off at the store of his childhood. This stops off at the store of the mother of his childhood friend. He kind of brags about the money he has. And she assumes he's been gambling again. And he asks about her son. And she says, oh, he's off on a business trip. He's gone for a while. We learn different, of course, later. And then later that night, he's looking at pictures of his daughter. He starts to get very scared. And so he calls the number on the card. They pick him up in a van. They gas him. And he wakes up in a room with 456 people, including himself. So does anybody want to comment on what happens at the point after he wakes up? All the things that happen before they play red light, green light.
It's interesting that when he wakes up and he tried to walk downstairs to the center, but on the way, he stopped and to talk with the elderly person, number one.
Mm-hmm.
And further down the show, like there are more details of how he actually bond with the weaker in the group. It just feel like this detailed shows like he has empathy. He's not only what was shown before, like lazy, not taking over his mother, irresponsible person. Like deep down, he still has something like especially when he is stripped from reality, like maybe somehow influenced by capitalism, in the pure new environment, like he showed his good side.
Yeah, I didn't notice until watching it this time that the old man is number 1 and he's number 456. In other words, they're the first and the last, right? And I very much experienced that conversation between the two of them as sort of a cultural conversation. In other words, this younger man has the spirit of a culture in him. In German, we call it a Geist. It's a lived type of themed life. He's stuck between that life that he obviously values because he lives it, and then the life that he finds himself living because of the capitalist society that he's in. And I see that conversation between him and the old man as sort of letting us see, as you said, empathy. For me, it was letting us see a bit of that cultural Geist that I think this series was trying to say is kind of at risk if a culture keeps pushing itself more and more in a certain direction. That's the vibe I got. And why was he called 1 and the other one 456? Does that stick out to you guys for any reason?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if they know, I watched a lot of review and, that turns, so I know it, but it's actually the sequence of how it's the level, your level in the society. So 1 is the main guy who created the game, who is in the top of this social status, and the 456 is the last of that level, And I was looking at different numbers. I'm like, okay, that guy might be close to the top, but not there yet, and stuff like that. So the numbers actually indicates how advantage versus disadvantage that people in the society.
So is that? I mean, of course, then it means that straight up. Does it also speak to somewhat like class awareness, class sensitivity? Is it a comment on that in any sense?
Yeah, like a class, like the 1 is like top class, 456, which is the end. The last number is like the lowest ever class out of them,
Number 1 is the pool shark.
What?
He's a pool shark. He's like the master of the game, but he's pretend as like a very weak new player.
Right. So let me ask you this. Why do they play? There are 2 scenes between when we see them wake up and red light, green light, where we hear Western music. We hear Western music when they wake up, and we hear Western classical music that's what we hear. And then when they're in the middle of red light, green light, there's a scene where a lot of people are dying now. A lot of people are being shot, and they play American jazz, and they have this little jazz band music box. Now, those things just kind of stuck out to me. I was curious if you guys had a sense. Why are they playing Western music this way? And what was with the jazz music box?
I don't know. I think it's probably symbolizing the high class people, how they, enjoying their luxury life, and the death of, struggling people is like a game for them, like how they consider the people playing the Squid Games, and then they just, deminimize the importance of life who's playing the games, I think, using that specific music.
Yeah, for me, it's interesting that I didn't view that as Western at all. I mean, the music is just part of our culture too. We have been enjoying the Western music for long now, and it was more about class rather than Western versus Eastern.
Sure.
And those classical music that's on kind of upscale, more classical, that rich people are more likely to enjoy. And that really was more about kind of fine things like fine dining, fine jewelry,
right.
Kind of finer music. And also that felt like the superficial beauty of capitalism So when people are dying, in the capitalist system, people keep dying. People suffer. They're literally dying from this, misfortunes. But the system looks beautiful. It has fine things, and there are people, many people who are enjoying the fine things when others are just dying like that. And they just came there they didn't know that they're going to die, but they just swallowed their pride, just gave up their dignity, and they just came out of desperation. And I think there was a kind of contrast.
Oh, yeah.
The capitalist people who are advantaged and who are able to cherish the fine products of the capitalism, and those who are just the kind of losers and victims of the system.
Yeah, but
Fly Me to the Moon, that song is so popular in Korea, has been,
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's I think it's almost Korean song at this point, because when it comes to let's say relax and have fun, be cool, being like the fine dining, whatever, that music is one of the most played song that anyone can sing it without even seeing lyrics at this point, So I think that the director intentionally played a song to remind Korean people when they watch it, it's about like having fun for those high class people, when those suffering people died away. It doesn't matter for those people, high class people. I think.
Yeah, I really like what you guys are saying here, because it's almost if, on the one hand, the music is fine, right? It's refined, it's beautiful in a sense, and at the same time, it juxtaposing that music with what's happening during the game, as Suejung said, sort of reveals the machinery that allows that kind of beauty to exist to some extent. I mean, we don't talk about it that way, but it's almost as if focusing on beauty allows me to ignore the destruction that takes place in the name of creating this beauty. I like to refer to this as sort of dissonance to virtue, in the sense that the beauty of it, the sort of sacredness of it, in the sense that it doesn't feel like it's in daily life. It feels precious. It feels sacred. It feels that way precisely because we feel dissonance. In other words, it's almost evidence that we know what's going on. Therefore, we create these things that distract us, that allow us to take what we know is going on, which causes us cognitive dissonance, but turn it into a virtue for ourselves because we appreciate this beauty and we cultivate it. And you see this happening in a lot of things going on in the United States right now, if you like, where, people take their cognitive dissonance and turn it into a virtue for themselves, right? And that's all a way of maintaining a certain level of mental health. Now, that statement often hurts because people think being calm, having mental health is kind of a good thing. At the same time, as we mentioned about the guy they picked to meet him in the subway, right? He looks calm and he is calm. And there's a whole world of struggle and sacrifice that provides a scaffold for that calm, that life, that beauty. So I love it when that message, gets portrayed that well.
It was pretty creepy when I first saw that scene, like with the little figures jumping out with the machinery mouse singing the song. But that's one of my favorites. And they played that way. I was so pissed. But for like in that scene, they also show lots of people died on the screen, right? But there's people like enjoying. But that person who's enjoying, they used to be in the same situation, right? Like he was a player in the previous game. So I'm thinking, well, this just sounds like the American dream I was told to when I was in China. It's fair. Like it doesn't matter if you have relatives in the government. It's here, everybody's the same, which is true. You just work hard and you have a fair competition. You get the prize in the end, like you have the jackpot, the pig with all the money to show, oh, this is the final goal. Everybody work for it. Like I didn't find it particularly a negative image. I just find it analogy of capitalism and the American dream. Like fair competition, you have sacrifices, but they are a big price.
Anyone else?
I just because when I watched the game, the show at the beginning, of course I don't know the whole story behind the game, who designed it, why designed it, what's the ideology behind it. Just because the number one guy, the old guy who designed it, I think he really thinks that's fair. He really thinks we shouldn't trust people. There's no hope, and he really values the money. And because of his psychopathic ideology, I see the game as just wronged psychopathic games, wrapped with the name of fair, which is not fair at the end of the day. So now the way I see it is very different. People who suffered enough to lost their mind to believe, I don't know if they really believe, but involved into that unfair game, which is claimed as fair game by the number one guy. So yeah, the overall game, in my opinion, just so psychopathic just because of how suffered people are, and they had no choice to, they have no choice and then have to join the game, So it was all kind of sad, from the beginning.
In terms of the fairness of the games, I mean, I can relate to what Joy said a little bit in terms of, I mean, I can see the point of the number one guy or others claiming that the games here are fair because everybody's getting the same opportunity, same chance. And I mean, and that's what can dream, suggested. But I don't feel like that is actually true in any capitalist systems. And I think that's almost an illusion that, it's fair. If you work hard enough, then, you'll get the results. And that meritocratic, ideology, I think that's what really masks what's really happening at the system level. And the losers take all the blames for not working hard enough.
Yeah.
And the winners, they just can enjoy the bliss of ignorance of their privileges and just believe that I worked hard and I got the results. And
very good point.
But then giving the equal opportunities for everyone, at least in that game setting. So I can see that whoever that designed the game, I think he had in partially right idea, giving the same opportunities, offering the same opportunities. That's what's fair, which is not offered in actual reality. So I think he got the right idea. But then
to kill.
Yeah.
I didn't tell that you're gonna die.
Or too harsh. But then it was too harsh. You die, right? If you just make a mistake and if you lose one game, you just die. And you might feel like psychopathic and too cruel. But I think it can be just everyday reality for some people. You work hard every day and then you just make one mistake and then you lose the status, and it takes less than 3 months for you to become in extreme poverty after you lose your job.
Yeah. I have to say, not this episode, but later on, one of the contestants is actually shocked because they broke the rules, and they give this big speech about the game being fair. And I thought, okay, I can see where they're trying to go with this. Their people are getting played out in reality because it's not fair, even though they're being told it's fair. And here it's going to be fair. But then when I listened to the old man's discussion at the end about why they were playing the game, it had nothing to do with any moral compass, nothing to do with any value. He just wanted to have fun. And, what I like about that is it sort of reveals the empty promise of fairness, right? And they told the people about the fairness, and they killed contestants about the fairness so that they keep playing. Right? Because one of my favorite things that happens is when they vote to leave, and then they all come back, right? I mean, we'll talk about that when we talk about the second game, but I guess as Suejung said, the illusion of fairness, and the interesting, I mean, for us then, if we think that fairness is an illusion, we have to ask ourselves, what does that mean? Does that mean that fairness is logically impossible? Right? It's an illusion to think that we can have fairness, or is it simply an illusion to believe that there can be fairness and we have it? I hope that distinction matters, because if we don't think fairness is logically possible, then we have to have a different conversation about what we're going to respect about how cultures distribute wealth, right? If we don't believe fairness is logically possible. Yeah, you guys got any thoughts on that? Or
yeah, it's either or. Sorry, go ahead, Joey.
No, so go after you.
No, I was just gonna say it's not either or in my mind. I think what you just said, both can be true, and I don't think that they are mutually exclusive. And I may be too pessimistic, but I don't think that fairness is really possible. At least there is a system like this, like ours, continues. And I mean, any systems, I'm not necessarily a socialist, or I don't believe in communism or anything like that. And I'm not anti-capitalism either. I mean, but I just don't appreciate what capitalism does to so many people. And I think fairness exists as an ideal and ideology, and we just do our best to pursue that. But I also think that it's really important to acknowledge that we are not able to achieve fairness, thinking that we achieved fairness by doing X, Y, and Z. I think that's an illusion. And by believing in that, I think we just enjoy the bliss of ignorance again, that, the unfairness still exists and continues to exist, and we are just able to walk away from it just pleasantly because of our privileges and because our ability to walk away.
So it's another dissonance to virtue, where we know that the system isn't fair, yet we claim it is because we need to get through the next day, and there's no way I'm giving up my money, right? There's no way I'm giving up what I've got. And since we put, I guess what I'm trying to say is, since we put so much emphasis argumentatively as a culture on the concept of fairness, I'm wondering if we do ourselves a disservice by maybe that's not the point. Maybe that's not the discussion we should be having. Maybe we should be having a discussion that doesn't collapse on a binary of fair, unfair, but rather looks at the fact that we're sustaining a lot of our own privilege by claiming things are fair, right? Then what should we be looking at, or rather, what should we be teaching our kids to respect, other than illusory concepts like fairness, right? That's a conversation we can have throughout this whole podcast, because it's something I struggle with all the time, because I have a strong sense of fairness, despite the fact that I can't tell you for sure what it is.
I think.
Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
I totally agree. I feel that sometimes fairness is functional. It's like it can be used as a tool, like either to maintain our own benefit or, for the how to say, for the company to, to stimulate the maximum productivity of the employees. So I ensure your fairness and you will work harder for me. But in this case, the fairness can only be achieved within a group or locally, so that it can give somebody outside of this locale benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just sounds like a tool to me.
I think we also need to think about fair to which type of person, because fairness for some persons maybe not apply to the other person. And in this case, well, they give same opportunity to the people. And they choose the random game that is not being played by and not able to even play. It's by the old guy, I mean, he has played the games for many, many years. He know all the strategies, but let's think it's an old guy with a lot of illness, like he claimed, then it's not fair to him, but it's fair for maybe other guys who's been playing the games, in society as well, they may set up certain systems and feel like that's fair, but you really have to think, is it fair for every person or this person, And in that sense, I believe while we want to achieve fairness for everyone, I think it's just not possible. I think like what we discussed, it's probably not binary. It's probably continuum. It's probably process instead of like end goal, So it's hard conversation.
I suddenly recall the experiment. I think was done on monkeys.
Yeah.
Right. You give the other monkey some better food, and you give that monkey a less good food, and the monkey got angry.
Cucumber and grapes.
Grapes.
Yeah, I remember.
Cucumber grapes.
Yeah,
I think Scott told me, or who told me? I think it's when I was.
I showed the video.
Yes. It's like, yeah. So, although fairness can be a social concept, but it's kind of ingrained in individual level too. We seem to have a sense of what's fair or not fair, and have an emotion to it.
So what I really like about what you just said is that, is fairness an abstract logical concept, or is fairness about what we want? And to be honest, I think the concept of fairness tends to come from what we want. And that's not being cynical. In that experiment you just mentioned, ain't no way I'm eating lettuce when you gave that guy grapes. That's not happening, and I'm going to get mad. And so what we have is relative fairness from the very beginning, right? And based in the world of desire, what we wanted. And for me, I prefer starting these conversations in terms of everybody saying what they want, instead of what logical concept should be, because once we use that word should and we create this binary threshold, it can never apply in all cases. And then some get above it and say, well, of course it's fair. And then the ones below it say, no, it's not. And the issue is, you have grapes, I don't. All right. That's what we need to talk about. All right. You have generational wealth, I don't. You have access to college networks for your kid to go to school, I don't. Let's talk about how those things are distributed and what we all want. And then for me, the best we can do is try to do things that are other respecting, self-respecting, but I don't think it's ever gonna, okay, now it's fair, now it's not. And anything we decide is going to be temporary anyway, because the next monkey is going to get some cake, and then I'm not eating grapes if there's cake available, man. Let's make that clear.
Exactly. It's not about what I want, actually. It's about what the other guy gets. I mean, when the monkey didn't see the grapes, he was happy with the cucumbers.
Cool.
And then, he didn't want the grapes in the first place. And yeah.
Well, I love that, because it shows the socially embedded nature of fairness, right? It's relative. It's not a absolute scale. And we often talk about it in absolute terms. And I think that works against, making progress on this front. So what was your reaction when people started getting shot? Did you anticipate that was going to happen, or it was like, what the hell?
Not at all.
I kind of anticipated because, with the price and that big, there's
Yeah.
gonna be some sacrifice. And when, when especially at the beginning, they were some players are being very playful about it. And usually in a movie, you see some character being very playful and happy. That character is gonna die soon.
I first.
Yeah.
Like when they say stop, there's also a small pause, as if something is gonna happen. This piece is created to contrast that thing is gonna happen. So yeah.
Anyone else initial reactions to that first game? Well, to the red light, green light game.
Very shocked, very shocked about the first shot and those blood. I know director said they intentionally choose that green shirt so that the red, the blood color, and then green shirt has the biggest contrast so it can shock people the most. And then
Yes.
it was very effective to me, and I know a lot of people feel the same way. The other thing which I really like, I don't know, it didn't get a lot of, didn't get a lot of attention in my opinion, but there was a time that Pakistani guy, right? He's in the movie, he's from Pakistan, but he's probably Indian.
Yeah, he's
But,
Indian.
Yeah. He grabbed the main guy, 456. I don't know, that symbolized something to me because a lot of times, in South Korean society, they probably visualize these Pakistanians and those individuals from developing countries are working at the lower class, and probably they may perceive themselves as helping those individuals. But at this specific moment, again, the one who willingly take a risk to help the person is from that country, and who is working in that class. So I don't know if the director was intentionally want to tell something, but that was, quite interesting moment for me,
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, if we consider that character somewhat othered in South Korean culture to some extent, then you have that othered person saving the life of a group that would other him spontaneously. What that does is transcend the othering, and it sort of shows that natural empathy that, oh my God, just stop him from falling. It was a much stronger moment than it would have been if it hadn't been that gentleman who grabbed him. And I think you're right. I think the director was getting right at the heart of the notion of empathy, just like he did in that initial conversation between 1 and 456, right? Finds these moments to bring these elements together and then poof, have the empathy kind of burst through the screen, to be honest, and sort of grab you by the nose and say, pay attention. This is what empathy looks like. Any final comments on Red? Oh, go ahead, Suejung. I'm sorry.
Sorry. My cynical side kind of view that as, he did something extraordinary to the unothered majority people. And that's how he got a spot, in that group.
Yeah.
So you, as an othered person, you have to be extraordinary.
Yeah.
You have to show, okay, these are what I can offer and I'm useful. You need to demonstrate that to be included.
Yeah.
Then you ended up being taken advantage at the end by the guy who went to the university. And so he was true to himself, being an empathic person, and just someone was in danger. He just did what felt right to him at the moment. But I think he was also a victim of the different, system there.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's very well put together.
That's fair. I can
Any
feel
other comments on red light, green light?
I have a question. Why do you call it red light, green light? We call the game differently in Korea.
Oh, really?
And yeah, it's I just had to look it up. And we don't say red light, green light. We say 무궁화 꽃이 피었습니다. That means I found the name of the flower. 무궁화 꽃 is rose of Sharon or hibiscus. And so that's the national flower of South Korea. And 무궁화 꽃이 피었습니다 means that hibiscus has bloomed. There is a kind of rhyme. So we say that. And then while we say that, you can move.
Oh.
And I didn't know why you call it red light, green light. And maybe Shengtian, in your reviews of YouTube videos, you might have found those answers. But I heard that the same game is called differently across different countries. So I was wondering why you call it red light, green light here.
In the United States, we played red light, green light when I was a kid, and it just refers to traffic signs, traffic lights. So green light means go, red light means stop. So you would turn around, look away and say green light, and then you turn around and screw red light. And if you saw anybody moving, so that's why I was a little confused with the translation, because it said you can go while the person is announcing red light, green light.
Right.
And I didn't understand. No, you say green light and people go, and then you say red light. But now I understand that there's a saying.
Yeah, you can go. You can go until the person just turns around.
And that explains why the old man was moving so rhythmically. That's why he was going with the pace of the saying, and he would put his foot down and stop when the saying stopped. Okay, now I get it, because you're only supposed to move while you hear the voice. Exactly.
See, I'm a Korean in China, and we have different lyrics for the song.
Really?
So what we say is like 새가 돌아왔습니다. So that being said, bird is coming back. Bird is coming back.
Wow.
You know. Joey, do you have your version?
The Chinese version I played exactly red light, green light. But the rule is the Korean one. Like when I say, I'm the statue girl, I would just say red light, green light, stop. Like once I say stop and turn around, they have to stop. But I would just always say red light, green light as like part of the song. I can even prolong the stop. Like I can say red light, green light, stop.
In English or in
Chinese?
Okay. How do you say that?
红灯绿灯停. Like 红灯 red light, 绿灯 green light, 停 stop.
And I love that that's a kids game, because it's all about inhibition, right? It's all about being able to stop what you're doing, and which kids are developing, and that's why they have a hard time with it. Absolutely. I love it. Any other final comments on red light, green light? So that about wraps it up for tonight's episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Squid Game contestants, please tell the audience where they can find you on social media if you are so inclined. And we'll start with Joey.
You can find me on Facebook by searching Joey Bai.
Fantastic. How about you, Shengtian?
You can find me on Twitter. Just type Shengtian Wu and I'll be pop up. If you follow me, I'll follow you.
Fantastic.
And how about you, Suejung?
I don't do much of the social media anyways, but I'm trying to minimize my online presence. So
I totally understand. You can find me on Twitter at @dark_loops. And you can find all episodes of Dark Loops Squid Game at the Dark Loops Productions channel on YouTube. If you'd like to leave feedback about this podcast, please send it to Twitter at @dark_loops. Leave it below on this YouTube page or send a message to darkloopsproductions@gmail.com. And we'll be sure to read it at the end of our next podcast. So there it is. From all of us to all of you, big hugs. And remember, red light, green light.
红灯绿灯停.
무궁화 꽃이 피었습니다.
새가 돌아왔습니다.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.